I worked for a law firm, a major law firm, and their offices were down across from the World Trade Center. I started work at 8:30, so I'd get up a little early, get down there early, take the subway, and come up out of the subway. That day, it was a beautiful day. When the first plane hit the North Tower, we heard it. We heard this loud, booming sound. We felt the building even shake a little bit. Within a matter of a minute or two, someone ran in to the word processing center and said a plane had hit one of the towers. My initial reaction was to go down and look, and mainly out of curiosity, because when I heard that a plane had hit the tower, my assumption was it was just a very small plane, and so I expected to see just the small back end of a plane sticking out of a window. When I got to the lobby, there was a revolving door on the side, and I walked through that revolving door out into the street. And in thinking about it now, I mean, making that trip through that revolving door took me from my life as I knew it into a life I had never imagined. When I stepped out into the street, the first thing I thought, it was like a war zone. The one thing I remember is the paper. There was paper everywhere. The ground was covered with it. I took a few steps to Church Street, which was the street right in front of the World Trade Center. That's when I saw the North Tower for the first time. The only way to describe it, it was like a black canyon filled with billowing smoke and orange flames just shooting out. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that, you know, and I know I just stood there transfixed, you know, staring at that. At one point, I noticed some things falling down the side of the tower. At first I thought, you know, it was debris or something. I realized, though, very quickly that it was a person. And I started screaming, "No, no, no." That was all I could say. My response, for whatever the reason is, I ran towards the North Tower. And it was just raining debris, you know, parts of, I guess, the plane, the building. I remember the sound of glass breaking continually. And so I looked, and the North Tower is like a half a block from me. And, you know, I just so badly wanted to be able to be over there to if anything, hold someone's hand. The thought of people laying there just really got to me. Then I heard the second plane. It was so loud. I just remember how loud it was. Fire shooting out and debris and smoke. You know, I know myself, and I think everyone, we kind of stood there for a second or two, like in shock, and then it hit us. Oh my God, we've got to run. Ahead of me there was a man, a very heavy-set man, lying on his stomach in the middle of the street, and everyone was running past him. And I ran past him as well, but after I did, I stopped, and for whatever reason, I ran back to him. His head had been split open by something falling, I take it, and at that point, another man joined me. He got down on his knees. I remember someone handing me a denim jacket, and they said, "Here, take this." And so we put it over his wound. The man and I, we just held our hands there. And by that point, other people were coming over, and we saw an ambulance at the end of Church Street. And so we all just started yelling and screaming for it to get up here, to get up here. And they lifted him and put him into the ambulance, and I walked with him. And I remember I just kept stroking his arm and telling him, he'll be all right. So I just kind of started walking a couple blocks north and ran into a restaurant, and said, can I use your phone? And they just kind of pointed, so I went to the phone, and I could only remember the phone number of one friend in New York, his work number. So I called him, and I said, Billy, call my parents. They're in Lancaster. Tell them I'm all right. That's all I could think to say, and I hung up. And then when I walked out of there, that is when the first tower collapsed. I didn't know at that point that's what it was. All I heard was this tremendous sound, and I looked behind me, and there was this huge wall of debris and dust just, rapidly coming towards us. And we all just, people started screaming, and I just remember I just started running. And I don't think I've ever ran as fast, and I was able to outrun that. At that point began the long journey back up to my apartment in Midtown. Just kind of a mass exodus of everybody just in the streets. There were lots of groups of people, and they either had a radio or the car was on, and that's when I first started hearing something about Pentagon and Pennsylvania. And that was the first time when I started to think, what's going on, when I started to piece that, okay, something is happening. I slept with the light on, which I continued to do for quite a while. I must have woken up 6:37, and the first thing I did was call my parents here in Millersville, and basically just cried. And that was kind of my pattern for at least the first week. I would wake up in the morning and call them and cry. But that day after, my routine every day before work, as I left for work, I'd go up my building. There was a cafe right across from me, and I would go there and get my first cup of coffee and go to the subway. Well, I kind of went there just, out of habit, and the woman who owned it, she had opened up, and I remember I was one of the first people there. And I remember her apologizing that she didn't have any pastries, But everything she had left from the day before, bagels and pastries, she set up this table and just put it all out. She filled these urns with coffee, put those out, because there were tables outside. And everything she had, she just offered it for free, I mean, that right there is a sign of what was happening, to New Yorkers. And so I sat there, and other people from the neighborhood, recognizable people started coming. And so we were sitting there, drinking coffee, maybe eating something. And it reminded me an awful lot of when I was growing up and a relative would die. And, after the funeral, you all get together and eat. It felt like that. It felt like, to me, it was like that was the beginning of our mourning, sitting there trying to comprehend. I sat down on my computer to write an email that I was going to send to everyone, and basically I was just going to say, I'm okay, and send it. But I found once I started typing, I just kind of described the whole day before, the previous morning, what I had witnessed, the sights, the smells, the sounds. I mean, I just put it all down, and then I sent that out to people, and people responded to that right away and thanked me, because for one, it was giving them a glimpse into what it really had been like, and I just found it was helpful for me. So that was kind of the start. So I just kind of continued writing. I maybe sent 3 other emails to people. But then even after that, I just wrote. I ended up quitting my job in November after 9/11 because by then we were back down at what is now ground zero, and I maybe lasted 2 weeks, I guess, but I just could not I couldn't do it every day. So after I quit, I just continued to write, just kind of for myself. I had moved to New York in '77 to be an actor, but I had given that up, oh gosh, like in the mid-'80s and joined the corporate world. But one day, it was the beginning of '02 in January, I just had a thought one day. I thought, I wonder if this would be a theater piece. And I had met someone involved in theater at that time, and I gave him everything I had written and said, could you read this and tell me, do you think it could be a play? And he called me that night and he said, yes, I think it could, and I would like to direct it. So yeah, that ultimately became a one-man show called That Day in September. And so for the next 2 years after 9/11, I devoted my life to telling my story. It was very important for me to tell my story, and that was one way I knew to tell it. These 8 years being away from New York, I think I've always lived with a shred of guilt over having left New York. Feeling I left it right while it was still recovering, you know, and that I had abandoned it. But I was able to really see that those 26 years I spent in New York was really just one chapter of my life, and that chapter really was over. So I kind of think it's like, you know, when you lose a spouse, someone very close to you, you go through that period of mourning, however long it takes, but you do get to that point where you finally realize, I have to get back into my life, you know, and I think that's what's happening this year, and how apropos that it's the 10th year.